And you weren't really aware of the events that happened that morning, were you?
The morning of his
July
murder?
Of July 11th?
No, I wasn't.
Okay.
Because you didn't tell me.
Miss Woodcock, did you see or hear or personally witness me conspire with Alex Cox to kill my husband, Charles Vallow?
No, but I saw a ton of evidence that did.
Thank you. No further questions.
Well, hey folks, after a week of a pretty intense testimony in the Lori Vallow Daybell murder trial, where she's being charged with murdering her fourth husband, Charles Vallow, was enough for me, and I had to escape to the mountains to kind of check out how things here at my cabin were looking and see if I could get in and start enjoying this summer property. You know, day 4 in the Daybell case really saw some emotional testimony from Charles Vallow's sister, Kay Woodcock, a digital forensic deep dive that we had both on the cell phone and the examination of the bat, and Lori herself questioning witnesses. But most importantly, the testimony of Adam Cox, Lori's brother. So join us as we break down this jaw-dropping day of testimony, from religious delusions to courtroom stares. Well, welcome to Profiling Evil, where we dig deeply into facts. We try to explore the psychology and we break down the criminal behaviors one case at a time. Now, if you're into true crime without the nonsense, hit that like and subscribe button and ring the bell. And please consider sharing Profiling Evil with your friends. And if you've thought about our memberships, go over and check out our channel memberships. Now let's take a closer look into the evil behind the headlines. And let's see how the Daybell case is unfolding. Well, it's day 4, the end of the first week of testimony in the Lori Vallow Daybell murder trial. Now, she's facing a jury in the death of her fourth husband, Charles Vallow. The courtroom is packed, elbow to elbow. Colby Ryan is seated beside his aunt, Kay Woodcock. And this is the first time he's seen his mother, Lori Daybell, since he testified against her in Idaho 2 years ago. The tension, holy cow, palpable. Well, Charles Vallow was a baseball player through and through, a lefty pitcher who understood the power of a strong lineup. In baseball, when you want to change the momentum and set the tone, you oftentimes lead off with a strong hitter, and that's exactly what the prosecution did when they put Adam Cox on the stand first thing on day 4. He wasn't just a witness. He was their leadoff hitter, and he came out swinging. Now, Adam's name might not jump out to you if you're kind of new to this case, but he's the defendant's, Lori Daybell's, brother, and he's also the guy who was supposed to help Charles Vallow stage an intervention on Lori for her wacky behavior. And this was supposed to happen just 2 days before Charles was gunned down. So when Adam took the stand, you could feel the tension in the room. It had been 7 or 8 years since he had even spoken to Lori, and now he was looking her eye to eye in open court, under oath, with a story that would absolutely wreck her defense. This wasn't just family drama. This was about truth, betrayal, and possibly justice for a man that Adam liked and respected, Charles Vallow. Now, Adam grew up in Southern California with his siblings. He was one of 5. There was Stacy, Alex, Lori, Summer, and then, of course, Adam. He's now 56 years old, living in Arizona and making his living as a pro pickleball player and an instructor. But back in that day, he was a radio morning talk show host. He was articulate. He is still articulate, steady, and he was quick with details. He was exactly the kind of witness that the prosecution had hoped for. Now, personally, Adam and I and Rex have shared a number of talk shows together where we've been on those shows and also on Profiling Evil. I consider Adam a friend, and I was rooting for him from the stands just like I would a baseball player getting up to bat. Now, Adam testified that he and Charles Vallow had been close. They texted often, and they called each other regularly. Charles had confided in Adam, and over time, Adam started seeing a deeply unsettling side to his sister Lori. Now remember, she's the Lori Daybell, the defendant in this case. And Lori told her brother that she had been translated into an immortal celestial being, that she had more religious power than anyone else, and that she didn't need to repent ever again. Now, Adam is a faithful member of his church, and he was stunned by this revelation that she provided. He'd never heard anyone, even fringe members, say anything like this, so it was really troubling to him. In fact, it troubled him so much that he confronted her, and he even told her, quote, "I don't know if you're crazy, but what you're telling me isn't true," close quote. And just like that, when he confronted her, Lori Daybell cut him off. Now, she was Lori Vallow at the time, and that sometimes gets a little confusing, so I might just use Lori from now on, or the defendant. Now, her decision to cut him out of her life didn't just fracture their sibling relationship, it created a rift between Adam and many members of his family. When he tried warning them about Lori's dangerous beliefs, they dismissed him. And they told him that she'd just come around. She'd snap out of it eventually. But she never did. And by June of 2019, Adam had become Charles's closest confidant. The two started talking about staging this intervention with Lori. The goal was simple: to get Lori counseling from church leaders and mental health professionals. They hoped that if the faith leaders could hear the strange things that Lori was saying, things about spiritual rankings, zombies, demonic possessions, that they might help snap her back to reality and get her into professional mental health counseling. Charles even booked Adam a flight to Arizona to help with the intervention, and the plan was to confront Lori together, maybe over dinner or something like that. But they wanted to secretly record a conversation of her talking in these wacky terms so that they could share that with the appropriate people. Either way, the important part here is that Charles was desperate. He said she's gone off the rails, and Adam agreed with him. And that's when Adam turned to the jury and he said that he wanted to help Lori more than anything, but he wanted to help Charles, a man who he saw as a soft-spoken, broken-hearted man. And so he made the trip to Phoenix on July 10th, 2019. Now that's one day before Charles Vallow was murdered. He was expecting to stay with his brother Alex at his house. You remember Alex, I'm sure. He's the one who killed Charles Vallow. He killed J.J. Vallow. He killed Tylee Ryan. And I think all things point that he killed Tammy Daybell. Now, Alex didn't respond to any of Adam's texts. In fact, he just frankly ghosted him. And Adam was frustrated. He thought it was weird, and he thought it was alarming. Adam ended up staying at his parents' house, and the next morning on July 11th, Charles texted him early in the morning saying, "Hey, Alex is at Lori's house." Now that was when he was arriving to take JJ to school. And that's when Adam sent the most alarming text back to Charles that, frankly, I can imagine. It simply said, quote, "They're planning something." And they were Lori and Alex. Well, Charles never replied to that text. And the next thing Adam Cox knew, Charles Vallow was dead, shot by Alex Cox in Lori's home. But nobody in the family thought to call Adam and tell him that Lori's husband was dead. Adam's parents didn't call him. Alex certainly didn't call him. Lori didn't call him. Nobody called him. In fact, Adam wouldn't find out that Charles was dead until 2 days later while he was visiting a friend in Tucson, Arizona. Adam was telling his friend that something wasn't right with Charles and Lori and that he hadn't heard from his brother-in-law, Alex. He shared what was going on and some of the wacky things that Charles had been sharing with him, and his buddy started searching on the web. Horrified, he stumbled across the death of Charles Vallow, and he turned to Adam and he said, quote, "Dude, he's dead, killed by his brother-in-law," close quote. Well, Adam's stomach dropped. Chaos, shock, disbelief, rage, all the emotions you might imagine. Adam testified that he freaked out. It was one of the worst feelings he's ever had in his life, he would testify in court. He immediately called Charles's sister, Kay Woodcock, the only person that he felt safe in calling. And then he called his mom. And he said to his mom, "Did you know that Charles is dead?" And she said she was aware that he'd been killed. And when Adam demanded to know why she hadn't told him and what happened, she said, "Will you tell me what's going on?" Well, that conversation went sideways. And when Adam showed up at his mother's house, he said things only got worse. It was then that he told his mother that he believed that Lori and Alex had conspired to kill Charles Vallow. Well, after learning more, Adam was convinced that Alex, who regularly carried guns, had brought a loaded weapon with extra magazines to Lori's house, knowing that JJ was there, knowing that Tylee was there, but most importantly, knowing that Charles Vallow would be there. Now, that didn't sit right with Adam. And when he connected the dots, Lori's bizarre spiritual claims, Alex ghosting him, Charles being lured to the house, it all became clear. And he testified in court that there was no doubt in his mind that Lori and Alex killed Charles Vallow. He further testified that Lori had said that Charles was no longer alive, that a demon named Ned had taken over his body, and she believed he was a zombie. Alex, acting as Lori's protector, just happened to be there at the right moment that morning, armed and ready. He was simply defending her when Charles got out of hand. Well, looking back, Adam said the whole plan to intervene, to shake Lori out of her delusions, all of it was a last-ditch effort. Charles was ever hopeful. Charles was desperate. But Adam, he was trying to just do the right thing. They had planned to meet with Lori's ecclesiastic leaders and share recordings of Lori's bizarre doctrine. They even thought about confronting her over dinner, but time ran out. And now the man that Adam admired, Charles Vallow, was dead. And then, as Lori began her cross-examination of her brother, Adam Cox, we got that enchilada moment. Holy cow. Lori tried to downplay the rift between them, saying things like, "Hey, did you see me in 2018? And weren't we eating my green chili chicken enchiladas? You know, the ones that we made every time we got together for like 10 years. Adam looked at her just with dismay on his face, and he said, "I don't remember that." Well, it was one of the weirdest moments in the trial so far. Lori, facing murder charges, was trying to evoke family nostalgia over enchiladas. It felt tone-deaf, manipulative, and completely disconnected from the gravity of the courtroom. This wasn't about dinner. This was about death, deception, and dysfunction. Well, as Adam Cox's testimony wound down, he stated that speaking out cost him nearly every family relationship. His mother, his sister Summer, his brother Alex, who, is now dead. But he said he kept speaking out for Charles. He kept speaking out for JJ, Tylee, and Tammy. And then the prosecutor asked, "Did you continue to stick up for Charles even after it hurt your family relationships?" And he said, "Absolutely yes." Well, after everything, Adam stood by his convictions. He told the truth, even when it meant facing his sister in court for the first time in 7 years. And for a man who spent the last few years being shut out by his family, maybe this moment, this testimony, was his way of finally being heard. Adam's testimony wasn't flashy, it wasn't dramatic, it was raw, real, and unrestrained, and that made it all the more powerful. This was a man who lost his brother-in-law. He lost his family. He lost his sister that he once loved to something dark and delusional. But he found his voice in that courtroom, and maybe, just maybe, he helped the jury find the truth. Now, the next witness of the day was Serena Sharp. This is a woman who admitted that she was attracted to this end of times doctrine of Lori and her compadres. That was until Lori Daybell started talking about casting out evil spirits during a girls' weekend gone bad. Now, if Adam Cox was the prosecution's leadoff batter, Serena Sharp was their strategic second, placed perfectly in the lineup to chip away at Lori Vallow Daybell's carefully curated persona of innocence. But unlike Adam's calm, heart-wrenching delivery, Serena's testimony had a little bit of a different kind of energy. Her words were deliberate, but what stood out even more was Lori's cross-examination, because this time, Lori was sharp, even aggressive, revealing a side of her that we've seen before, but never this close up. Serena testified about a now infamous girls' weekend that started with typical activities like church trips, lunches, service projects, but then things turned bizarre. According to Serena, Lori initiated a casting out ritual, claiming that her husband Charles was possessed by an evil spirit named Ned. Now, Lori referred to this spiritual parasite using a word that stuck in Serena's mind for years. She called him a zombie. That moment, Serena said, hit her so incredibly hard. It was weird, it was off. It was not what the Latter-day Saint doctrine taught, and it was opening her eyes to something far more sinister going on under the surface. Maybe the most disturbing part of Serena's testimony was a recollection of Lori saying that she no longer needed to repent. According to Serena, this wasn't a whisper or a passing thought. It was a bold proclamation from Lori, rooted in her personal belief that she'd reached some high-level spiritual plane. Now, Lori allegedly pulled out scriptures to support her claim, and Serena remembers being shocked, dismayed. She said it was completely against her faith and its teachings. Well, after that weekend, Serena said Lori started kind of pulling away from her, limiting contact. Now, this is important because control in Lori's world often came through disconnection, gaslighting. When Lori started to cross-examine Serena, we got a glimpse of this alleged killer without her mask on. Lori didn't hold back. She didn't want to just undermine Serena's testimony. She wanted to control the narrative. She grilled her on how many one-on-one conversations they had ever had, questioning her memory relentlessly, asking her over and over again to recall exact quotes from 6 years ago. Lori Daybell pushed the zombie topic, clearly irritated that Serena had attributed it directly to her. She even invoked biblical prophets who the scriptures say were translated, hoping, in my opinion, to prove that her beliefs weren't all that strange when considered in context. She was just another prophet. Well, I'm sure that in Lori's mind, reframing the story makes her sound spiritually enlightened, not disturbed. But the effect? It backfired. This wasn't just a defendant asking questions. This was Lori in control mode. She was combative, smug at times. She was interrupting and often offering all kinds of goofy commentary after the answers came from the witness. At one point, she even questioned why Serena stayed for the entire weekend if she was so darn uncomfortable, essentially gaslighting her into thinking that her discomfort wasn't valid. And she wrapped it in a passive-aggressive, sugar-coated way, like saying, "Hey, but you're a grown woman, right?" Well, it showed a deeper layer of manipulation. Lori didn't want to just discredit Serena's testimony. She wanted to make her feel small, like she imagined her power still held. But Sharp's testimony, heck, it was compelling in my opinion. She left the jury with a clear indication that Lori Vallow Daybell's teachings contradicted her mainstream Latter-day Saint beliefs. She revealed that Lori thought that Charles was possessed by an evil spirit named Ned and that he was a walking zombie. This witness made it clear that she witnessed Lori attempting to cast out Ned, that evil spirit, and she challenged Daybell on her doctrine. It was then that Lori gaslighted her, another sign of her control strategy. Again, cutting off people who don't fall in line. But then, powerfully, Sharp indicated that she never saw Lori mourn Charles' death, and she saw what she thought was an emotionally detached woman. But Lori revealed her manipulation tactics in the courtroom. She downplayed Serena's memories, insisting religious justification, and she turned the courtroom into a stage for her spiritual delusions. Serena may have been quieter than Adam Cox, but her impact was unmistakable. She offered us a glimpse into Lori's religious extremism before the murders occurred. And Lori's performance during cross-examination, it only reinforced the prosecution's portrait of a woman who believed that she was above consequence, both the earthly and eternal. Now, the next person up in the batting lineup was retired detective William McDonald, who stepped up to the plate, a seasoned utility player for the prosecution. This wasn't a flashy at-bat, but it was a solid contact. McDonald is a forensics expert with digital information from the Chandler Police Department, and his job was to extract every bit of digital residue from Lori Vallow Daybell's cell phone. He looked at deleted text, call logs, browser searches, and the officer explained how this kind of data doesn't just vanish into thin air. It can still be recovered, it can still be cataloged, and it can be cross-examined. Now, this detective didn't deliver a home run, but he certainly laid down a clean bunt that got a runner into scoring position. And this was a kind of a table-setting testimony, the kind that doesn't win the game, but makes it winnable. And this is how they build the timeline. And we're starting to see him craft the motive here, because then came Marissa Francisco. She's a latent print examiner in the police department. And her assignment was to analyze that Rollins bat, the bat that was believed to be involved in that confrontation between Alex Cox and Charles Vallow. It's a bat that has haunted the narrative since the beginning, a potential weapon and a relic of violence. Now, the examiner found 2 fingerprints, one tucked inside the W in the word Rollins and the other in the letter G. There simply wasn't enough detail, though, for her to make a match to Charles, Lori, Alex, or even Ty Lee. Still, the bat and those ghostly prints added another shadow to the crime scene, a reminder of just how close forensic science can come to telling us more about the whole story, and how sometimes it can fall short. So that was no grand slam today. Just when you thought the courtroom couldn't get any heavier, though, Charles Vallow's sister, Kay Woodcock, stepped up to the plate. And what she brought is less testimony and more deeply personal, emotional reckoning. Kay Woodcock is a soft-spoken but resolute woman. She's Charles Vallow's sister, and she laid out the family ties that connected her not just to Charles, but also to J.J. Vallow, her grandson, whom Charles loved and adopted. Now, she spoke of Charles as a meticulous athlete, a generous, left-handed pitcher who once played in the minor leagues for the Houston Astros. She said he was the best dad. Clearly, she was fighting back emotion as she said that. Now, Kay testified that Lori had Charles cremated, and shipped his ashes to her office via FedEx. Now, how personal is that? She also sent along a couple of cheap trinkets, a high school Letterman jacket, and some cheap sunglasses and a watch or two. Nothing of real value, and nothing that felt like Charles Vallow. Now, this moment made the courtroom audibly uncomfortable. The casual cruelty of just having Charles cremated and shipping his remains via FedEx to her office. How crazy is that?
How did you learn that your brother Charles was dead?
It was on July the 12th. I was at a nail salon in Lake Charles, my granddaughter and I, and I got a call from his oldest son, Cole, and he said, "Hey, what is going on? I just got a text from Lori, and she said Dad's dead." And I said, "Wait, what did you just say?" And he told me again, and I said, "Something's wrong with that. That can't be true." And I said, have you tried to call her? And Cole's like, "Yeah, she won't. I'm trying calling. She's not answering." He was freaking out, and I was like, "Okay, Cole, just give me a minute. Let me think about this. Let me see, and I'll call you back. I promise, as soon as I can figure this out." So I called my husband to tell him, and he said, "Okay, well, I told him that what the Cole said, and he said, 'Hey, let me call you back in a minute.'" And so I was still at the nail salon trying to get out of there, and he called and he said, "He's dead." I Googled him, and he's dead. Alex killed him yesterday. And I mean, that was just like, it was horrible. I have to call my siblings and let them know. Thank you. And everybody was freaked out. I didn't know what to do. But I did call Cole back and let him know that it was true, and just was telling him, let's keep in touch. You find out something, I'll find out something. We'll let each other know. And
Did you try to reach out to Lori?
I tried calling, texting Charles. I tried calling, texting Lori. And at some point, she texted me. She returned a text, something like, "I'm having to deal with a lot of stuff, and I'm busy." And she was too busy to even call his family to say that he was dead by her brother killing him.
Now, Kay Cox testified about Lori's text to Kay after she learned that she had been removed as the beneficiary of Charles's $1 million life insurance policy. Lori reportedly texted, quote, "5 kids and his sister gets all the money. Is that why you want JJ, question mark, close quote." Well, Kay snapped back in court, staring at Lori Daybell, and said, "I wanted JJ, period." That was a dumb statement by Lori. JJ was all that they had left of Charles Vallow. And the accusation that she only cared about the money felt like another attempt at gaslighting in its purest form. Now, Kay painted a picture of Charles in the early 2019 period of time leading up to his death as a man who was deeply alone, felt like he was raising JJ alone, while Lori had disappeared for nearly 60 days. She testified that Charles was so lonely that he actually counted the days until Lori returned. She said he was a heartbroken man. And she said when Lori finally did reappear, it was at a time when Charles happened to be packing up their house in Houston and preparing to move to live near Kay. Well, what happened next was incredible. She testified that Lori walked in, started yelling, and only stopped yelling long enough to cry briefly and say, I love you. I mean, talk about this emotional roller coaster. But there was no redemption in that moment, no real apology, just confusion, tension, and emotional chaos. It was Kay who Charles confided in about wanting to remove Lori from the life insurance policy. It was Kay who helped him move to Houston. It was Kay who helped him care for JJ. And it was Kay who had to Google her brother's name to confirm that he'd been shot to death. She didn't get a call from Lori. She didn't get closure. Instead, she got a FedEx box with his ashes. Well, as far as my baseball analogies go, this wasn't a highlight reel home run either. This was a somber seventh inning stretch where the crowd got incredibly quiet. Everybody remembers why they showed up in the first place. Kay's testimony was the kind of testimony that sticks with a jury. It's not flashy, but it's real, raw, and undeniably powerful. The defense, Lori, tried to poke holes in Kay's testimony, asking if she'd ever heard Lori plan the murder. Kay's response? No, but I saw a ton of evidence that did.
And you weren't really aware of the events that happened that morning, were you?
The morning of his
July
murder?
Of July 11th?
No, I wasn't.
Okay.
Because you didn't tell me.
Miss Woodcock, did you see or hear or personally witness me conspire with Alex Cox to kill my husband, Charles Vallow?
No, but I saw a ton of evidence that did.
Thank you. No further questions.
And with that, the inning ended. Silent, devastating, and unforgettable in my opinion. Well, what a day in court. I mean, we started out seeing Adam Cox swinging for the fences, coming face to face with his sister after years of silence and standing up for Charles Vallow like a man on a mission. Then we watched Serena Sharp. She held her ground under Lori's cross-examination, giving us that real-time glimpse into Lori's controlling edge and her deeply unsettling beliefs. And finally, we saw Kay Cox, who brought it home with a sister's heartbreak and a grandmother's grit, proving that the ripple effects of this crime go far beyond one moment in time. This case is more than a murder trial. It's a collision of faith, family, devotion, delusion, control. Every witness has brought us a step closer to the truth. And now I want to hear from each of you. What do you think stood out the most to you today? What do you think stood out the most to you in this week of testimony? Was it Adam's intervention plan? Lori's eerie calm during the cross-examination of Kay's heartbreaking description of learning her brother was gone? Or was it something else? Please put your comments down below. And don't forget, we've got deep dives into each witness, including our breakdown of Lori's zombie theology, her manipulation tactics, and what's coming next in this gripping Arizona trial. So hit that like and subscribe button and check out our other videos on the Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell case here on Profiling Evil. You can find the Doomsday Story Map by going to profilingevil.com and going under the tab Story Maps. When you're on the Story Maps page, just go down to the Doomsday Daybell Story Map. Click on that and it'll take you right over to the story map where you can start to explore this crazy case. Gives you a chance to look at different things. You'll see these tabs along the bottom here. You can look at Chad's turn in this whole thing, the murder charges against them, an overview, and you can even go in and look at Lori's lifetime here and get a little more information to kind of get an understanding of all these husbands that she had over time. You'll see there's a cool map to the right, and that map kind of shows you the location where each of these events occurred. You can check out her first marriage in 1992 to Nelson Yanes. And then 95 when she marries William Langiola.
Take her a little while further to get to 2001 when she marries Joseph Ryan. And we learn a little more about Joseph Ryan in this thing, a little bit about him being found dead, the circumstances around that, and then her marriage to Charles Vallow. And each of these, as you go along the way, will have a little more information about them, including things about Chad Daybell and Tammy Daybell, their relationship, and where things go from there. As you explore this story map, you'll find all kinds of cool information, even talking about things like their thoughts on light and dark spirits, or a little discussion about Lori's sister, Stacy Cope, information about Joseph Ryan, and again, his death and what happened around that. So I think you'll really enjoy going into the story map and exploring things on this, including looking at some of the past case history as you explore more about this crazy case.
Hey, drop your thoughts in the comments down below, and please take time to jump in on other people's conversations and discuss things, but keep it kind and constructive. And thanks so much for watching Profiling Evil. I really do appreciate your support, and I hope you'll follow us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter. And for more updates and insights, you can also get our audio podcasts by tuning in to your favorite podcast platform. That way, you'll get Profiling Evil whenever you're on the go. And if you're hungry for even more true crime, head over to profilingevil.com on the web. You'll find more information there, and you can sign up for our digital newsletter, The Bolo. And that's a place where you'll get more insider updates straight to your inbox. The only way you're going to get it is by signing up at Profiling Evil. And if you love true crime books, I hope you'll check out Deceived, an investigative memoir of the Zion Society cult. It's applicable to this case with the Vallow Daybell crazy religious ritual abuse doctrine. I think you'll enjoy it because we explore cult mentality, recruiting tactics, and how these cults get away, in some cases, with murder. Hey, and you can also get my book, She Knew No Fear, which is the story of the 1891 murder of my great-great-grandmother and how I solved that murder 130 years later. Both are available, signed and personalized on the website. Or you can get it at Amazon anywhere in the world. So thanks again for being a part of Profiling Evil's community. We'll see you soon at the next crime scene.